Here we are at West Point. Looking down the Hudson River, it quickly becomes clear why this spot was chosen for the U.S. Military Academy. The river narrows, so it is a place that would be easier to channel river traffic into a small target area if this fortress needed to be defended. The Cadet Chapel at West Point is spectacular, from its vaulted ceilings and the beautiful stained glass windows to its battle flags and the largest pipe organ in the world. This Protestant place of worship was a must place to see on our trip. By the way, there are also two other chapels on the West Point campus, one Jewish and one Roman Catholic. The campus has many old homes like this one that were, and maybe still are, the residences of Academy administrators, the superintendent, the commandant, the dean. Many of them seem to be on or near the parade grounds. Of course, buildings like these are also present. The modern buildings include the new library and the science buildings. As might be expected, there are lots of war monuments and memorials on the campus. There were two that particularly caught our eyes. First, this dark and ominous World War II memorial, simply a row of cannons, each with its barrel pointed to the ground, a position in which it can cause no harm. The second is this more ostentatious Civil War monument, completed in 1896. It was a tribute to the Union forces and was paid for by deductions from the pay of all U.S. Army military employees. It has an impressive location on the lip of the hill above the Hudson River Valley. We left West Point and traveled east into western Connecticut. Along the way, our first stop was Danbury, where we went to a kind of cookie store that was described to us as a mix between Disney World and a country store. With lots of animated display, some good food, we tested it, and interesting circus wagons like this one, it was a hoot. If you ever get where there's a Stu Leonard's in Connecticut, go. Then we went on to a quieter afternoon, driving on winding two-lane country roads through beautiful countryside. Though not quite fall color there, the signs of the coming season were evident. This covered bridge that we happened on was typical of the folksy views along the way. Stone walls, so typical of Connecticut, always fascinate us. The intricacy of their construction, their durability, and the ubiquity in this landscape led us to share them with you. As we drove to Hyde Park, we discussed which we would do first, go to see the FDR home and library, or head directly to the Culinary Institute of America. We decided to make our historic trek first and then check out the Culinary Institute. We were met by this friendly couple in the courtyard of the visitor center. They looked like they were enjoying the morning. Next in line was a tour of FDR's mother's home, Springwood. Though it was nominally the home of Franklin and Eleanor, it is clear they simply hung their hats there. It was owned and operated by Sarah Roosevelt, Franklin's mother. If you look closely at the front of the house, you will see a portico that is almost identical to the one at the White House in Washington. It was added to the house when Franklin was governor of New York. Talk about setting your sights on the presidency. There is very little in the house that would lead one to think a seriously disabled person lived there. In fact, the only thing we saw was this wheelchair in a sitting room on the ground level of the home, and it was sort of off to the side. The next day, we went back to the FDR complex and visited the library, which turned out to be more of a museum than a library. Here you see Linda as a stand-in for FDR on his first inauguration, with an appropriately somber expression. Hey, it was the depths of the Depression. We were in Hyde Park for 2 full days and managed to go to the Culinary Institute of America, CIA in local terms, to eat 4 times. We arrived with no reservations, a serious error, but managed to find the coffee shop with its great food and the Al Forno Trattoria, with its traditional wood-fired oven, which they fired with olive wood that imparted a wonderful flavor to everything. Talk about delicious. We took a tour of the CIA with student tour guides, shown here. They, as all students we met, seemed really happy. Even the young man at the trattoria, who, when I said the bread was wonderful, proudly said that he had made that bread at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he was still working as I was enjoying it at 6 o'clock at night. The tour took us to this fascinating wall. This picture is just a little segment of it. The whole thing is 33 feet long and 8 feet high. All the words are exclusively related to food. Sturgeon, the notable source of caviar, warranted this recognition on this campus, an appropriate finale for our visit to the Culinary Institute of America. Now on to Saratoga Springs. The attraction here was the race course. It's old, 161 years old. It's got a reputation as a classy and classic racing venue, and it even has a museum with everything from sculpture and paintings to a whole section with skeletons of racehorses. The clubhouse seating seen in this picture puts viewers in a position to see the finish line without a problem. Lots of racehorses require lots of barns, and sure enough, there are a lot of barns across from the clubhouse and racecourse. The sign in this picture tells it all. At Saratoga, horses come first. Our primary destination on this trip was really to get to Stamford, Vermont. Our friends live there, and we were going to visit them, as we have done before. Their house in the Vermont mountains is beautiful. We think of this porch as a gathering place to enjoy friendship, nature, and a bit of libation. It's a house where the inside is outside and the outside is inside, no matter where you are. In the fall, in this area, there are two things we look for. The first is apples, so we went to this orchard and enjoyed their little store where the homemade donuts are awesome. The fruit jams are all homemade, and it is toasty warm even on a chilly day. The variety of apples is equally amazing, as this simple but effective sign clearly shows. But it was a bit surprising to see how many apples were on the ground. No doubt they serve as a feast for the deer and other wildlife. Since we have included links on the webpage for the museums we visited while in the Stamford area, we rely on the links to show you the interesting art we saw. Only this one picture from Mass MoCA appears in this video. We had never before seen trees growing upside down and suspended many feet above the ground. We thought you might enjoy seeing this too. Early in this segment, we said in the fall there were two things we look for in Vermont. Here's the second one: there is no better maple syrup. Corning, New York has long been known as the home of glass. We've provided a webpage link for you to visit the Glass Museum. We were particularly fascinated by the new contemporary wing of that museum. It has glass walls and ceilings that allow the natural light, or lack thereof, to create constant changes in the contemporary art made of glass, which is on display. First, we want you to see the ceiling. Designed to channel the light into the galleries, both the walls and the ceiling, which are almost pieces of art in themselves, allow every cloud and every change in the angle of the sun to change the art. Here, without further ado, are just three pieces that particularly fascinated us. Linda calls this thing creepy, but each of those crazy arms or branches catches the light in a different way. Those winding tendrils change their color before your eyes. In addition, the change in color makes them actually seem to move. Marty's favorite: when we arrived in the gallery early in the morning, this appeared to be solid black. About 2 hours later, it looked like this, with glowing red strips along the sides. Later in the day, it was brilliant yellow, orange, and vibrant shades of red, all due to the changing light in the gallery. These gondola-like pieces are made thinner in some places than others. They look like they're identical size and shape until changing light hits them. A cloud came over as we were looking at them. As it moved across the sky above, the shadow it made changed the lighting in different parts of this room, and the change in light resulted in this image. Look carefully and you'll see the subtle differences created on the gondolas in different parts of the room. Wellsboro, Pennsylvania is primarily a rural area, close to the northeastern corner of the state. It is in what is called the northern tier if you're a Pennsylvanian. Farms, deep woods, the Appalachian Mountains on the horizon, a fair number of rivers, and a few old, once prosperous towns like Wellsboro. Tourist attractions are few, but it is beautiful in its own special way, especially in the fall. This is a classic picture of contour farming, made interesting by the crop colors, the plowed ground on rolling hills, with the bluish hills in the background. Further up the road and nearer the mountains, the woods deepen. The weeds show the first signs of the fall foliage to come, and the milkweed pods await the monarch butterflies. There's a park up here that was created by the Civilian Conservation Corps, and through the hard labor of these men, trails, benches, and picnic tables were created, among other things, many of which survive today. By doing this work, they made a natural feature of the local area into a tourist attraction. You may never have heard of Pennsylvania's Grand Canyon, but here's a picture of it. Sometimes called Pine Creek Gorge, the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon area stretches over 45 miles with depths of nearly 1,500 feet. The park in Wellsboro encompasses 300,000 acres of woodland, with beautiful scenery including steep canyon walls and waterfalls. As we left the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania, we came upon this beautiful little church, so typical of the gingerbread decoration on many of the old houses in more fashionable Wellsboro. This church is carefully painted to recreate that style. Then, suddenly, we were back out of the woods and in Wellsboro, with its lovely tree-lined streets, interesting shops, restaurants, and city parks. One of the parks had this fountain and statue in it. A woman who was born in Wellsboro was memorialized by this statue named Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod, a poem by Eugene Field about childhood fantasies. Here's the cool thing. Linda knew all about the author of the poem depicted by the statue. He was the editor of her hometown newspaper in St. Joseph, Missouri. How's that for coincidence? Then we headed for Penn State. We drove southwest into central Pennsylvania to go back to our old haunt. It's been a very long time since we were last there, and it has changed a lot. We decided we would hit the creamery first, but sadly, as soon as we got on campus, we were lost. The navigator in our car fortunately knew how to get to the new location of the creamery. We thought we would never have to work to find this landmark. It had been in the same campus building for 74 years. The long and the short of it is we got some ice cream, as you can see. We drove around for about an hour trying to get our bearings and then called it a day. The next day we drove on home, came down through Lancaster County, and it was beautiful. And that's the whole story of the trip. So, bye.